Wat gaan van afgesperde strate, komplekse en spog landgoedere word? Gautengse hoof van stadsbeplanning sluit by ons aan om te verduidelik wat die plaaslike regering wil doen aan die apartheidsera stadspatrone, soos die premier dit beskryf. Trek komplekse laer of is dit eenvoudig net 'n reaksie op misdaad? Gautengse premier David Makhura het die afgelope week gepraat van hoe daar strenger toelatingsvereistes gaan wees vir komplekse, nuwe komplekse wat ontwikkel, en ons wil natuurlik ook weet of dit enige implikasies inhou vir bestaande komplekse. So, die Gautengse hoof van stadsbeplanning Rashid Seedat is here. Rashid, thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning. Goeiemôre.
Rashid, does this basically mean that there's going to be a quota system for complexes in future? Is that oversimplifying the issue?
It's totally oversimplifying the issue. Maybe if you just give me a moment just to go back for a second. But what we're really trying to deal with is the legacy of the past and also what's happened over the last 21 odd years since democracy. So the patterns that we've seen of segregation and separation that was wrought on by apartheid, still exist on the urban landscape. And really what the Premier was saying is that he's looking towards a new vision, a 2030 vision to transform space in Gauteng.
This is a broad South African problem that it's not only limited to Johannesburg. But as soon as you start telling people that they're living in apartheid-era enclaves, they start getting defensive because they're saying, we're only putting these walls up because we are feeling threatened by crime. What is the problem that we're trying to solve practically for individual families? What are you trying to change?
Well, I would prefer not to only talk about, about gated communities. I think there is a broader issue. And the broader issue relates to the existence of the historically black townships, of poverty, informal settlements, but also on the urban landscape. Yes, indeed, there are gated communities, and I think that the Premier's quotation mustn't be taken out of context. What it is how do we create, I think, much more livable spaces, places where people can walk around, where they feel safe, where people cycle to work and so on. It's that kind of idea that informs the new paradigm.
Proponents of complexes point to a map that we will put on screen now that has red outlines of where these complexes are. They are not central as per the Premier's speech. They're actually quite on the fringes. They're outside the highway, for example, in Johannesburg, in Fourways, and on the West Rand there's a bit of a pocketed development in Bryanston. And those people who stay there would say that I can cycle within my community, I can walk, I can have freer access to public spaces within that gated community. I will bring down the walls naturally as soon as I have the same safety outside that I do have inside. Is addressing it not perhaps rather a case of facing the fact that crime is an issue?
No, absolutely, and I don't think anyone denies that. Crime is indeed an issue, and I think we all face it, and we have to protect ourselves and our families. But what we have to do is to do them in tandem. We also have to begin the debate about how do we transform these settlements. Part of our agenda is that can we have something called, for example, inclusionary housing. This is a concept that is very popular in the US, for example, where new developers are asked, for example, to set aside X number of different kind of classes of housing, so some affordable housing, maybe more middle and then upper end, so that you have a mixed income kind of development. Because I think, that's part of the issue.
When you say mixed income, will Anna Matebula from Mamelodi be able to go buy a 2-room house in a Waterkloof complex?
Well, in theory, yes, but of course there are many constraints to it because Mrs. Matebula may not be able to afford very expensive levies that are charged. So we'll have to see how that actually gets managed, whether there's some level of cross-subsidization, etc. But can I make this point? We're not about to impose anything. If we have, we will open up a conversation about how to begin to integrate those settlements within the broader urban fabric. And everyone will be part of the debate.
And existing developments? Are they under threat?
No, absolutely not. I don't think that there's anywhere in the speech that actually says it. If anything, the point the Premier was emphasizing was that he really wanted to wants government as a whole, including municipalities, to accelerate the developments, because the approvals of those developments, so that investors don't just sit on an investment which is taking many years to get finalized.
And then when you do see that development being, getting the green light and being built, the free market response will necessarily be to rather go invest in a gated community which is pre-existing to this new approach, where you don't have that scale development. Will that not only cause further polarization instead of bringing people closer together?
No, but if we, I think the question is, would it be voluntary or will there be some regulatory framework? So I'm saying that perhaps there may be a need for a regulatory framework to ensure that there's fairness across the system, so that people don't have the option of opting out. But I'm not saying that is what we're going to be doing. I'm saying that could be the response once we've agreed collectively on this is how we should be proceeding.
But when you point to regulatory frameworks and telling people basically then where they can and can't live and where they should go, isn't that bumping our head in exactly the same place we did during the apartheid years?
Oh, absolutely not. As an urban planner, anywhere in the world, and I've been to many cities and towns across the world, I mean, governments regulate and decide on what should be doing, what should be happening. For example, zoning laws in the US are exactly that. They'll tell you how high you can have your building. They can tell you the distance between your perimeter and your building. They'll tell you how many dwellings per hectare or whatever. So governments regulate. There's nothing inherently wrong with it. Otherwise, we'll have unplanned developments like we had in medieval times. So we're not in medieval times. We want to modernize our society and bring it up to date. So let us actually do that in the right kind of way, but not in a way that fundamentally affects the rights of people. So, and I think if that's the issue, then there's no issue from our side. We absolutely accept the point.
Okay. And then if you look at cities, you point to cities worldwide. For example, London, a city similar to Joburg where they have a massive influx of people who need housing and accommodation, and where obviously houses in the center of the city cost more than the ones on the fringes. This is a trend that exists worldwide. In South Africa, it was perhaps cosmetically created by apartheid, but it naturally developed in that direction elsewhere anyway. And there they focus on transport, getting people in and out of the city quickly and inexpensively, and gentrification has in many cases solved the problem of housing by redeveloping old industrial useless areas. In Johannesburg, we have a big core of the city that's underdeveloped and at this stage, to my mind, is going largely to waste, with great infrastructure, old buildings that are standing often, abandoned. Is the answer not perhaps rather seeking ways of redeveloping unused spaces and increasing the access to central parts of Joburg through transport?
Okay, I just need to make 2 points. The first point is that it's not entirely true that what you're saying was historically true. I mean, I lived in London in the early 90s for over a year while I was studying. And actually at the time, a lot of the inner city boroughs of London were basically for the working poor, and it remained like that. Of course, over the last 20 to 25 years, the position has changed very fundamentally, and that's actually the big complaint that exists in the UK at the moment. So it's let's not assume that was always the case historically. In South Africa, you had the reverse, where actually the poor were pushed onto the periphery, and basically the rich had access to economic opportunity. So let's understand that historical context. There are many cities around the world that suburban areas are still considered to be the leafy kind of neighborhoods, and they are more expensive when they're out in the so-called periphery. Okay, so it's not uniformly the case. Okay, that's the first point to make. The second point, in relation to say using or doing what are known as brownfields developments, absolutely. I think that the Premier has made the point that in relation to the decaying inner cities throughout Gauteng, so it's not only, of course, Johannesburg is the biggest problem, without a doubt. But Pretoria, Randburg, but beyond Joburg, even in even like the old CBs of Germiston and Roodepoort and Krugersdorp and so on. I mean, there's a lot of infrastructure there. Usually they're public transport hubs and so on. So I think there are places that we could actually develop and densify. So if you look at the Premier's speech, part of what you were saying was that how do we also do that? And that's what I was saying. Let's not look at what we were saying about gated communities out of context, because that's very much fundamentally the issue. In Joburg, okay, for example, the mayor of Joburg has been speaking about corridors of freedom. Corridors of freedom, by the way, is literally outside your building. So across this corridor, the BRT corridor, there's meant to be densification along the corridor. So if there are derelict buildings...
But is there densification?
No, it's going to happen. No. So the plans are in place. The plans are in place. So remember, I mean, the corridor is being established. There's this one, and there's the Louis Botha is the other one. And the idea is that, with time, buildings will be bought up. There'll be incentives to developers to basically, buy, say, single property like 2,000 square meters and put up maybe a medium density development, so that people have access to public transport. But is this idea of transit-oriented development, as it's called? Okay, so that's the idea. So I'm saying that fixing the urban system maybe is the issue. Is that there are a wide range of things of interventions that one needs to put into place, and one of them is inclusionary housing. Okay, it's not the only
answer.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time. I wish we could chat for longer. This is a very interesting issue. En ek is seker daar's baie mense daar buite wat baie opinies hieroor het. Wat dink jy? Is die bestaan van komplekse en afgesperde strate en spog landgoedere besig om ons net verder te polariseer? Tweet by Netwerk 24 met die hitsmerk top stories of e-pos nuus by netwerk24.com.